All right, so today we got to start out by talking about this story that Don Jr. is talking about here. And he goes on to say the damn mayor of Nashville knowingly lied about data to justify shutting down bars, restaurants, killing countless jobs and small businesses in the process. Everyone involved should face jail time. How many other Dem-run cities is this happening in? Now, to be fair, I don't believe it's just the Dem-run cities, although he is right to point out that it is largely the more left-wing areas that have the more stricter draconian lockdowns. But again, I mean, you have places like Ontario now that have incredibly draconian lockdown measures. So again, it's not just that, and I know there's a lot of people that would point that out, but getting right into it, this is insane. And the one thing to point out too is I know you're going to have people also say, oh, this is just in the States and it's just one area. Well, if it's happening in one area, especially a major city, I would almost guarantee, in fact, I would guarantee that it's happening somewhere else. The question really is just how many other places is this happening in? And my guess is that it's quite a bit, right? Like my guess is that it's quite a bit given the fact that we already know that the lockdowns did not work, they never worked. Anybody at this point who's still having anything other than very minor restrictions and precautions is knowingly ignoring data, right? And I believe people that are doing stuff like this, yeah, they should be put in jail. Like, and this is the problem too. People say, "Oh no, it's over the top." Well, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. This isn't like lying about having an affair or something that really doesn't affect other people. Um, this is something that affects other people, right? Like people lost their businesses because of this. People committed suicide because of this. I'm sure people, are very depressed because of this, and it's all for nothing. And not only that, the mayor that ordered this kind of stuff, they knew it was bunk, right? So people that these governments that do this kind of stuff absolutely should be prosecuted. Now, is that ever going to happen? Absolutely not, because the government, they're not going to investigate and prosecute itself, right? And we can pretend that we have a just a legal system all we want, but the reality is that we really don't. Like we really don't. Let's just be honest about it. So anyway, yeah, this is the latest insanity going on out there. Um, Again, the thing that I've been saying for months now, every single new piece of evidence that comes out, it seems, because there has been a few exceptions to this, but probably 90 to 95% of the new info that comes out um, just makes the whole lockdown situation look worse. The new numbers that are coming in always downplay the severity. The all the fact that there's all this draconian stuff going on, mostly not, or actually I shouldn't say that anymore, but compared to places like Australia, we have it somewhat well, but Australia is literally living under martial law at this point. Like again, let's not pretend otherwise. Too, I really can't pretend people that, or I can't stand people that pretend otherwise, and that you have a lot of these places that literally are living under martial law right now, or at the very least close to it. If you need permission from the government to open your business, or if you need permission from your government to go out of your house, yeah, I hate to break it to you, but you're living under martial law. So again, this is just pure and utter insanity. It should not be going on. It should not be accepted, but that's the problem is you have a large percent of the population. I think it's probably a slight majority, but the big problem being is that the people that are awake to this garbage, a lot of them, they aren't making their voices heard. Now I understand why, but nonetheless, it's still not happening. So anyway, the next big thing I wanted to bring up is from Maxime Bernier here. Um, he says, key to understanding our era, one crisis after another is manufactured or grossly exaggerated by the globalists to create panic and justify curtailing our fundamental rights and growing state power, climate change, the whole what virus. terrorist attacks, police brutality, wildfires, floods, etc. Now, do I come at it from a slightly different aspect of it, in that I don't think that a lot of these politicians are necessarily globalists or, you know, taking orders from the UN. I mean, the people at the top absolutely are the Justin Trudeau's of the world. Those people are full on globalists. Absolutely have bad intentions, I believe. But like the mayor of, I don't want to pick anyone out, specifically, but the mayor of a city. I mean, I think someone like John Tory probably is a full-on globalist, but the mayor of like a city of like 100,000 people, I think that a lot of these people just get corrupted by power, and that's why government needs to be more decentralized. Government needs to be as decentralized as possible, right? Your local mayor and your local, city council and the local politicians should have more power and more of a effect on one's life than the prime minister or the premier does. And the problem is that's just not the case these days. It's not like it has no effect, but it's not like the prime minister should be an afterthought, because if one county or one city, I'll give you an example. If one county or one city doesn't want to go along with the stupid carbon tax or gun control or whatever, you name it, they should be able to say, yeah, we're not going to do that. That's how it should be. But the problem is that's not the case. And the reason why that's so draconian, why I disagree with it so much, is that why in the world should, people in downtown Toronto or downtown Edmonton, why should they be the ones deciding how, someone living in rural Alberta or rural Ontario live their lives? Why is that fair? Well, the argument is, oh, they're a majority, therefore, but how in the world is that fair? Right? Because the big issues facing people that live in rural areas are almost never the big issues facing people in urban areas, right? So that's something that I bring up when it comes to this kind of stuff. But Maxime Bernier is absolutely right in that these crises, especially the ones he brings up, sorry, they almost always are either fully manufactured or at the very least the classic, never let a good crisis go to waste scenario. And I think most of the time it's a never let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, this whole thing is a perfect example of that. I think the government was well aware of the threat that this posed to society. They did pretty much nothing to prevent it from getting out of control, which it never really did get out of control, but there was definitely a point in time where it was something we should have been very concerned about. Not as much anymore. But the government, they didn't close the borders. They didn't do anything to protect nursing homes. They sold our PPE to China. Like, again, like, it's just pure and utter insanity that was going on at the federal level and even the provincial level, right? Like, I think Doug Ford has done a terrible job handling this. Jason Kenney a little bit better, but still he could have did a lot more to push back against the draconian garbage going on. But yeah, I mean, it's just pretty much the story of our times these days, and I really don't mean to repeat myself so much, but again, it's something that needs to be talked about, and that's another thing that really bothers me about whenever you talk about this kind of stuff. All these people are like, oh, you're so down all the time. Well, no, I'm really not that down. I'm just pointing out reality, right? And if you don't want to deal with reality because it's uncomfortable, it's fine with me, but don't force me to adhere to your insane ideology, right? So anyway, that's the thing I wanted to bring up. The next thing I wanted to bring up is from Liberty Hangout here, and they say police are 18 times as likely to be killed by a black person than the other way around. Remember that stat the next time someone says the cops are targeting black people. And then again, the first thing people may point out is, oh, where's your evidence? Where's your proof? Well, again, you can just simply look this kind of stuff up. That's the stuff I really can't stand about, when you talk to people, especially people you disagree with, who are like, oh, show me your study or show me the link. Well, again, if you spent 2 minutes Googling this, you could find it, right? But that's the problem too, is that these people that you talk to, they've literally never heard opposing opinions before. That's why they're so confident in their worldview, that they live in an echo chamber, and they've never exposed themselves to a worldview that differs from their own, which is why the minute you bring stuff like this up, they immediately dismiss you, right? So that's the first thing to bring up. Again, the next thing too is just like, we should not be, this whole racism garbage, it should not be such a big story in the news, right? Like, it shouldn't even be close. But again, you have the people at the top that want to exploit the make believe crisis for their own gain, and you have the people at the bottom that are being exploited, that think they're, fighting for quote unquote justice, right? So it's largely just craziness. The next thing I wanted to bring up is from Rick Grinnell here, and again, this is something I brought up before, but I need to keep bringing it up because it's so important. Um, he says, to my California neighbors, when you vote for the same political party that has ruled our cities and state without opposition, you get your rolling power outages, water shortages, high taxes, fewer businesses, addicts living on the streets, and rioters dismissed as protesters. Again, this is the problem. This is the big problem nowadays, is um, these people will never admit they're wrong. And this is what I really can't stand about the left, mainly because it happens a little bit on the right, but not nearly as much. And the reason you know that is that, why aren't people dying to get out of the overwhelmingly red states compared to the other way around? Why do people overwhelmingly want to move into the more capitalist countries as opposed to the more socialist countries, right? So it happens to some degree, but literally probably 99% of the time it's people trying to get out of the left wing areas and into the right wing areas. And what is the big problem with that is that they just vote for the same stuff, and eventually the system collapses there and they go somewhere else. The problem is that usually it takes like a good generation, maybe more, for things to collapse. And the reason why that's important is that the average person is too stupid to recognize it, right? Like, if you have a near overnight collapse, the average person, yeah, they're going to recognize that and they're going to pick up on it. But when you have something that takes a generation, like, I mean, you look at California, this is something that's a long time in the making. I mean, they were voting red as during the Reagan era, and basically since the 90s. So again, it's been almost 30 years, around 30 years. I don't know what the exact year they flipped blue was, but um, yeah, like, this is something that's taken a long time, and this is why the left always fails too, is that they will never admit they're wrong. They're always 100% sure of their ideas, which is why the left always drifts to the left, because they never admit they're wrong, right? That this is the problem with the left, is that they always drift to the left, because whenever there's a problem in one of their areas, it's never we went too far, right? Like, it's never taxes were too high, it's never there was too much regulation. It is always not enough taxes, not enough regulation, and eventually people slowly move out, revenue goes down, and what's the solution? Oh, we need more taxes, more regulation, and more people move out, and then they just rinse and repeat until the entire thing collapses. And then, well, what happens? I mean, eventually it'll probably get built back up, but that's because people will probably move back in that are actually more business savvy, that actually want to build it up, right? But again, that's going to take a while, and again, we're not even at that point, even close yet, I don't believe. So anyway, yeah, it's crazy. It's very crazy that that kind of stuff is going on, and it needs to be talked about more. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter especially, but also BitChute and Parler. Those links are in the description, so make sure you check them out.